Hey guys, we're here with the Axial RR10 Bomber. I wanted to do an overview / review on this car before we started the brand new budget build series that's going to start next Friday. Now the RR10 is not new to the market. It's been out a while, but it's given us a good chance to get used to it, feel it out, and see exactly what it needs and how it handles. The car is basically a combination of a lot of components that we're pretty used to seeing. The AR60 axles with some modified link mounts basically, some new knuckles up front, Yeti rear suspension, Wraith front suspension for the most part. The one thing is that this does have a new style skid plate that is kind of a combination of a Yeti pan and a Wraith skid to give us proper geometry for those rear trailing arms. It still drops out of the bottom of the plastic tube frame chassis, just like we're used to with the Wraith. However, this one only needs 6 screws rather than the 8 that was in the Axial Wraith. The wheels and tires on this car look great. They're a Baja KR2 style tire licensed by BFG. The wheels are a Walker Evans molded wheel, which we've seen that pattern from Axial before. One difference between this car and the Yeti or like the Poison Spider Wraith is that this doesn't have the bolt-on hex style wheel. It's a back to a molded one-piece wheel. So that means that you can't do the SLW swap to get strong aluminum hexes in that wheel. Instead, you're just going to have to replace the full wheel whenever anything happens. Now, the chassis in general, an awesome styled 4400 class car, styled right after Randy Slauson's King of the Hammers winning car from 2015. The chassis has the rear spare tire mount with a full-size rear spare tire that's exactly like the rest of them as far as compound, foam, wheel, the whole deal. So a fully functional spare rear tire if you so choose to run it or use it that way. Another nice feature of this car, being that it is ready to run, is that it comes with aluminum shock bodies. A nice touch for that. These are basically the same aluminum body that we saw on the Axial Icon shocks. However, these are not branded in Icon shock because Randy Slauson is, in fact, sponsored by King. So these shocks also branded as King shocks. So you get blue plastics, basically. Other than that, pretty much like the icons that we've seen in the past from Axial. Now the chassis is set up for a rear sway bar. Now it is basically the same as the Axial Yeti sway bar, but it does require some different end links based on the distance that the mount is from the axles. So a rear Yeti sway bar can work, will work, but a Bomber specific sway bar is available for this car from Axial. This car does use the same rear fuel cell / weight box from the Axial Yeti back there, which we haven't actually seen any dedicated weight systems built for these cars from Axial or anything like that. When they were calling it a weight box, I was kind of picturing that they were going to come out with something, but I don't think we've ever seen that. I don't know if we ever will or if they were just saying that that was an option. Looking at this car from the bottom side, we do see a couple of other scale details that are kind of cool to see. It's got this front engine cage style design, what you would see typically protecting the oil pan and engine block of a full-size rock buggy like this. What they have done is that is actually the receiver box on this car, and it is attached just to 2 screws here in the front of the skid plate and then 2 that go up into the cage. So if you remove those screws, you can pull that receiver box out itself, or you can remove those 2 screws from the front of the receiver box, then the 3 along each side, so 8 screws total, and the center portion of this will drop down. Then you would need to drop the shocks, and you could separate the entire chassis from there. So total, that's 12 screws to remove the cage from this car, assuming that you don't have any other wires or anything like that attached to it. Now, as far as electronics in this car, the Tactic servo that we're used to seeing from Axial is still up front. That's a mostly metal gear servo. It still has 1 plastic gear way down in there, and that is usually the weak point of that servo. This car is running the AE5 ESC, as well as a 35-turn rebuildable motor from Axial. The rebuildable motor is a new thing from Axial. This is the first time we've seen that, and it's, again, a 35-turn, rather than like the 20-turn that we saw in the Wraith or the 27 turns that we saw in some of the SCX-10s. Now, a 35-turn was probably a pretty good decision. It's not going to burn up motors like a Wraith with a 20-turn did. A 20-turn was just way too much motor for a Wraith, and they got way too hot overheated easily, and people who didn't know to watch them or re-gear them would burn them up right away. The AE5 ESC is a decent ESC. It's a very inexpensive ESC. It doesn't have great low-speed control, and it makes a fairly annoying buzzing sound while you're driving it. But other than that, it gets the job done. It is waterproof, which is a big bonus to a lot of people. One really nice thing about this car versus, say, the Axial Wraith is that this car was built to hold the battery up front finally. This is the easiest car Axial has ever had to change the battery in. Even the Axial Yeti, pretty good. 2 body pins in the up front, pull the body up, a 3rd body pin to open the door for the battery box. So 3 body clips, and you were in there. This one is just 2 though. You pull 2 body clips out of the front of the hood and the whole thing simply swings forward. The front battery box on this is adjustable for different size packs, and in general, it's pretty roomy. It'll fit a decent size 4,000, 5,000 milliamp pack, especially if you're running a 2S. Some of the 3S packs you can fit up there as well. Look for the battery specs exactly and make sure whatever you're looking for is going to fit though if you're unsure. One thing you do need to watch when you're, say, ordering batteries is where the wires come out. Now, with how this battery box is built, what you ideally want is the wires to come out of the top, or the top front side of the battery rather than out of the corner, kind of like that. That corner, it doesn't like to sit down there as well. You can make it happen, it's just not quite as easy. So that may slightly limit the size of your battery packs unless you want to do a very simple and easy modification to that battery tray to make fitting batteries in that have this style wire design much easier. So the RR10 Bomber from Axial, more than almost any car other than that Axial Deadbolt, I would say that this is their best buy. The Deadbolt is an absolute steal for the money. This Bomber, probably a close second as far as what you get out of the box. I would absolutely recommend the RR10 Bomber to almost anybody looking to get into this style of car. That's going to be our introduction to the RR10 Bomber. Really looking forward to running this particular build series through, and I think that we're going to have a lot of fun with this car in the end. Look for the budget build to start next Friday, and then a new video every Friday after that. Again, if you haven't seen one of my budget builds in the past, you may want to go look back at one of them and see what I mean when I say a budget build. It's a little bit different than it may sound right off the top. With that, we'll see you guys next Friday for the first episode of the budget build with the RR10 Bomber.